Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are going to dive back into our Marriage Diary series by Erika Wilde. Now, if you haven't listened to the first book in this series, which is also called Marriage Diaries, that link is going to be available down below in the description section. Once you finish that review, come and join us as we dive into book 2, which is called The Invitation. We start off with Dean having a drink with Mac. We know that they met in the army. We know they've built this business together. That's his best friend. And so he asked Mac for the invitation to the Players Club. And it's a mansion that, of course, is privately owned, very exclusive, and it's invite only. And so at the time when Mac initially invited him and Jillian wasn't exploring as they are now, shall we say. And so now that, they're being a little bit more adventurous, he's come back to Mac to get the invitation. So Mac has noticed that there's been a difference. He doesn't go into detail, Dean doesn't, but Mac knew the day that Jillian came up to the office and left looking disheveled, and how completely off of his game Dean was after that. He knew like something was going on, right? But Dean just did say, that basically they've been revitalizing their sexual relationship, and they're open to new things. So he's like, I don't know how she's going to respond, but I'm just kind of hoping that she will want to go and try this out. So he apparently doesn't want to go to this place to like watch her with other men, and I'm like, well, of course he can't. He couldn't handle that because he couldn't even handle, you know, her just dancing, with a guy. So he definitely couldn't handle, her banging somebody in front of him. um. So, but he still wants to go. Apparently, the place offers more than just, swinging, swapping, or whatever. Um, they have a little bit more, something for everyone, basically. We also find out that Mac was married at one point, but he has this whole Captain Save-A-Hole type of tendency. And so basically he gets these tragic situations and tries to save the woman. They get to a certain place and then they wind up leaving him. And so that's what happened with him and his marriage, and that's the reason it fell apart. So of course Dean is like, he wants his friend to find someone, but he's like, I'm done trying to save, someone again. Right off the bat, I'm kind of with Mac, of, okay, you're equating being in a relationship to trying to save somebody. And those two things um, are not hand in hand. You need to understand why you have a tendency or why you want to save people so much, you know, and really maybe look at a person and maybe realize, hey, I've dealt with enough people who have had these extreme, dramatic, crazy types of lives. I don't really want to walk into that again, because you're equating being, saving someone who's had a tragic past as that's what a relationship is. So you saying like I'm giving up on saving. Well, what does that have to do with you being in relationships? You just need to do better with who you pick and choose. You know, that's it. He doesn't seem, as much as, we've read about him, it doesn't seem like he's a bad guy, but he definitely has that alpha complex, definitely have that hero complex. He has it. So that makes sense as to why he wants to try and save someone. But the problem is I feel like when a foundation is built upon you helping someone, what do you think is going to happen when they no longer need your help? I mean, you know, then guess what? There's nothing here anymore, because My reasoning for being with you is because I needed something from you, right? So he needs to stop getting these damsel in distresses. That's all. And I think he'll be fine. But anyway, I digress. We then switch to Jillian. Jillian is at Sugar and Spice. Um, Raina, who's now, one of her friends, she's the owner of the store. And Jillian's looking for something for her 20th anniversary. She doesn't want something too extreme, just kind of like seductive, come hither type of an outfit. So she finds um, a black lace lingerie thing, and then there's also some matching silk pajamas to go with it for Dean. So she's going to go ahead and go with that. She's super excited. A woman comes in, I think her name was Paige, I think. And she's a friend of Raina's as well. And, she's very much about her sex toys. And she is really happy for Jillian. She thinks it's awesome. You've been married for 20 years. And, you know, you guys are, basically still getting y'all freak on. You seem to enjoy each other. And I think that's why I like the book so much, is because even with the last book, that's what I thought. Well, let me say it correctly. Why I like the premise of the book so much is because you normally in the books, someone's growing apart, right? Um, Someone is, going in this direction. They want this type of a life now. It could be money changed them or just time or anything. But to see a couple that actually wants to grow together, I think is what's so interesting. It's because it's not something you always read about. That's what I really like about it. So she also has a thing Jillian does where she's thinking about going back to work. Her job for all these years has been taking care of the boys, taking care of Dean when he's home, right? And so now the boys are grown and Dean works a lot. He has business trips he has to go on different times. So now she needs something for herself. So she knows that Dean has a whole thing about her working, but at the same time, she needs to do this for herself. And I hope he understands that this is something she needs. We switch to Dean's POV. He's come home. It's their 20th anniversary. He had asked her if she wanted to go to like an expensive restaurant, but she preferred to be home and cook his favorite meal. So we get a little backdrop about his life, how they met. So in the other book, it touched on the fact that his family, or shall we say his father, was awful. Um, I don't remember them talking that much about the mother. We do find out that the way he met Jillian was because Jillian was a tutor. And so at home, he was physically and verbally, emotionally, everything abused by his father. His father was a drunk, and he was also abusive to his mother. So the mother worked two jobs while the father just sat at home and drank. And so when she would come home, there would be dinner on the table. He, fight her. So he was just a whole bunch of piece of shit, basically. Um, well, the mother couldn't take it anymore, and she wound up taking a bunch of sleeping pills and overdosing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. So anyway, Jillian was a tutor. He was on a really bad path, and he knew it. He was so angry all the time. He gets Jillian as his tutor. It was for math, and she was like the popular person, the rich girl, but she was like honestly a really good person, and she treated him like a person. Um, he really found himself, you know, enjoying the time with her. Like that was his favorite part of the day. Like that was his highlight, like just to be able to see her. So he says when she got pregnant, it really was by accident. Um, but her parents, of course, didn't approve because he didn't come for money. Um, and then that's when he signed up for the Navy. So his whole focus became, I'm going to provide for her. I'm going to prove basically to everyone that I can give her a wonderful, a beautiful life. And so he has been working super hard all this time, taking on full financial responsibility, um, just to prove, just and he wanted to give it to her as well, that to prove he's worthy of her. Because I think he didn't feel like he was worthy of her. He probably still doesn't feel worthy of her. Um, he now makes more than her father does in a year. They have this great kiss, and then she tells him go shower, because the first of every Saturday of each month, the guys have these martial arts trainings, and it's a requirement for everyone. So she's like, go take a shower, put on what I have for you to wear on the bed. So he goes, and he doesn't normally wear, silk pajamas. He wears cotton, but he goes ahead, he puts them on. So then they wind up kissing again, and she's like, we got to go ahead and eat before the food gets cold. And then after they ate, he gave her an envelope, which was the invitation. It said welcome on it. She's looking like what is this? So she opens it, and it says the Players Club. And he looks at her, and he says, do you know what that is? Because she's reading the invitation out loud. And she's like, well, why would you want to go to a place like that? I don't, she's like, what is this? So he immediately knows why she's looking this way. He says, I don't want to share you with anybody. Okay. I lost it when I just saw you dance with someone. I do not want to share you. He's like, monogamy is, upheld. If that's what you want, you do not have to participate in anything. There's confidentiality agreements that are signed. They pay exuberant amounts of money to just be a part of this club. It's a very safe environment, right? And she says, well, okay, then, I'm interested. And he's like, are you sure? He's like, I don't want you to feel pressure. She's like, no, I don't, I don't feel pressure at all. She says, I'm willing to try it. See what it's all about. So they're going to go to this club. So then she gives him her gift, and it's this sexy erotic spread that she did, and he is instantly hard. And then he's like, who the fuck took these pictures? And she tells him it was a friend of Raina's who does sensual, erotic type of photographs and stuff like that. So she came in the playroom and she did them for her. And he's like, oh, okay. He loved the book. He couldn't even get through the whole book. His dick was hard. So she started sucking him, and a little too good. He was about to nut. He had to stop between looking at the book and her sucking. It was overload, sensory overload. He was about to burst. So he's like, I need to be inside of you. And it was supposed to be this nice, sweet, loving night, but he was so incredibly turned on. He was like, sit on it. And so she did, and they had a nice hard fuck, and they both came, and the rest of the night he spent making it up to her like for the rest of the night. It's the night of when they're going to go to the Players Club. Jillian has got on her little tiny black dress. She's ready to go. Dean's getting ready, and he tells her he has her actual gift for their anniversary. He didn't have it for her on that night because it wasn't quite ready. So she's like, but I thought the Players Club was like the gift. And he says, no, because that's for both of us. So she opens up this jewelry box, and it has a J and a D kind of entwined together. And then there are like 3 rows of nothing but diamonds, and it fits kind of tight. So I'm like, oh, this is a collar. It's absolutely gorgeous. She says, she of course is like, Dean, you didn't have to do this, X, Y, and Z. He tells her he likes to spoil her. It makes him happy to do it. So let him do it. So he tells her he has another surprise for her. He gets out a little vibrator, and it's called a vibrating orb. And she looks at him like, you really think I'm going to let you put that thing in me? Because there's a wireless remote that goes to it. She's like, you've got to be crazy. He's like, no, I'm not, and you're gonna do it. And sure enough, he puts it in her, and he turns it on. It's driving her absolutely crazy. She's like begging him, please just let me come. He's like, nope, we are both gonna be on edge tonight until it's time for us to both come. And I'm like, oh my gosh, poor girl. Well, she tells him, well, you're gonna have to turn this off, otherwise. She was ready to put her hands down in her panties to, like, did she have on panties? I think she had on a thong. She was ready to rub one out. And I was like, so he turns it off. They leave. They take the vintage Aston Martin, of course. They go to the club. He had told her already that Mac and some of the other guys from his company, like, that they have memberships there, and they were gonna be there, and she was fine with that. So Mac is always flirting with her. That's his norm. He winds up taking her to get a drink while Dean talks to the other guys. Um, as she's walking by, one of the guys was looking at her ass, and he says, I advise you stop checking out my wife's ass. So while she's having a drink with Mac, he says to her, oh, that's a really, beautiful collar. And the minute he said collar, she looked at him, and she kind of whispered collar, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I meant what a beautiful necklace. But I'm like, no, it's tight fitting. It's a collar. It's very much about possession. So after a little while, Dean turns on that vibrating orb, and it makes her jump a bit. Mac, of course, is like, are you okay? She's like, I'm fine. He doesn't seem convinced, and then he realizes what's going on. He says, oh, looks like someone bought a new toy, and doesn't know how to act with it. So then Mac, his date comes, and he's like, well, I'll catch you guys later. He leaves. And then Dean comes over and says, let me give you a tour of the place. And she's like, wait a minute, how can you do that? I thought this was your first time coming. He says, well, I came yesterday to do a brief tour so I could see the layout of everything, as well as, set up a little fantasy of ours. And so she was like, oh, okay, He's like, they do that for new members. So they go, and I mean, it's a lot of sucking and fucking going on as they're walking by. I mean, it's a sex club. It's a lot going on. And it made me laugh because it was like, this is literally like a fucking mansion, like, in every bit of the word. So all of these sexual intense scenes she's seeing, they're making her wet. One of the scenes was a woman. She was sucking and getting fucked at the same time. Really erotic to her. And he stops in front of that scene, and he stands behind her, and he says to her, are you imagining yourself taking and receiving pleasure as well? And he's like, just watch them. And so she does. And so then he turns the orb on a little bit higher, and he's rubbing on her clit, and she comes like super hard. She almost blacked out. And then he was like, all right, I got another surprise for you. So he takes out a blindfold, and he's like, tonight I'm going to push us past anything we've ever done. He's like, I want you to trust me. And she says, of course I trust you. And so he blindfolds her and takes her into the darkness. She's blindfolded, and she's walking through. She's hearing all these different sounds of ecstasy around her. And so not being able to see, of course, heightens everything else for her. And so then he takes her into a room, and he tells her, I just want you to know that we're in front of a large window where people can see us. She immediately feels her stomach flip because it's like, oh my gosh. So then he tells her, because she's still blindfolded, and he doesn't take that blindfold off, but he has these cuffs that he puts on her arms, and then he straps these things around her thighs and puts the cuffs to those things that he puts around her thighs. I don't know what they're called. So that way she can't do anything. She won't be able to move. I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of fucking trust. He has a leather paddle, And he sets the ground rules, and he tells her that she has to call him sir, and that if there's any type of hesitation, he's going to wind up giving her a smack. And so before she even took her clothes off, he wound up giving her one. And she could feel it through the clothes. Not that it was that much material, because she just had on a little black dress. So he starts sucking on her tits, and then he tells her, I want you to suck me off. Like, I want you to make all these men watch you suck me off. I want them to know how good of a mouth you have. So I'm just kind of sitting here like, so you want people to watch her do sexual things, but then you couldn't even handle her dancing with another dude? Like, what's the possessive part? Is it, I don't get that. I'm like, why would you want to have someone else see her do something extremely well according to him? Like, why would you want them to see that? Like, I would think in his brain he would be afraid that someone would get obsessed and, psychotic behind the idea of watching her do that and want that and not be able to relinquish that fantasy of her. Like, I don't know. I just would think he would think more so along those lines and not be okay with it. But then again, I'm like, well, is this some alpha male crap where you want people to know that this is yours? Is that what this is? Because that seems kind of crazy that you need that. But, to each his own. But it just, I don't know. It just, the way he reacted in that last book, it just kind of threw me off. And I don't know. I was just stunned. So anyway, she sucks him off great. He has his dick all the way in her throat. She swallows all of his cum. So afterwards, he says for her to go and sit in a chair. Guys are over to the chair, and he's like, I want everyone to see how perfect your pussy is. And he tells her that, like, there's couples, like, sucking each other off. There's, people fucking, jacking while they're watching them. And he's telling her all this stuff, like, you suck me so good. Like, there's this person, this guy that's been watching us the whole time. And he tells her, I'm going to let him come in and taste your pussy. He's going to go down on you. And again, I'm a little floored, because I'm like, how the hell can't handle somebody dancing with your wife, but you can handle somebody eating her pussy? Like, that shit, I don't get this. So he goes and opens the door, and apparently there's another guy that starts eating her pussy. But then she realizes there's nobody else in the room, because she knows how her man's mouth feels, right? It's Dean. So now she was kind of like, okay. So apparently that was a fantasy of hers, but it wasn't anything she ever thought would ever happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like a fantasy that was supposed to stay a fantasy. So, but now knowing that it's him, it's like, okay, she's good. So afterwards, he took off the blindfold, and we find out there's no window. So she already knew, like, there was no one else that came in and ate her pussy the whole time, but he was trying to create the whole fantasy for her. He told her, I will never share you with anyone. He's like, I will never allow another man to see your naked body, to ever eat your pussy, fuck you. I could never do that. He's like, you're mine, no one else's. And that made her feel good, because I think you hearing, even though she has so much trust, it's just kind of like, you was gonna let somebody eat my pussy? I'm like, it's just if he was okay with that, it would make me think it's just a matter of time before he starts feeling like, I want to watch someone fuck you. You know what I'm saying? So she tells him, like, she saw some other rooms, like there was a jail and things like that, and she was saying that, maybe, when we come back, we can, play in those rooms. And he was like, oh, absolutely, we can do that. So Jillian has been invited to a Cocktails and Cocks club, which is a private club that Raina, Paige, Summer, just these different people that she's met through Raina, and they were the ones that helped her do her pleasure room. So they were all friends before, and then she's kind of coming into the friend group. And she's the first person they've ever invited. They've had this group for about 3 years, and she's the first person they've ever invited. Um, they of course are like, we're jealous of you because you get dick on the regular. They're like, we're all in a dry spell, and they all have great toys that they purchased from Raina, but ain't nothing like the real thing. So then they want to know about her experience at the Players Club because Raina had told them. And she's like, listen, because, Jillian's like, you told him? And she's like, listen, we're a tight group. We don't keep secrets. But I'm like, she wasn't invited to the club, so you shouldn't have been telling her shit. But anyway, I digress. So she told them about it, and they were like, did they all have huge dicks? They wanted all the details, and she's like, there's a lot of them that are hung like stallions, and they're like, oh my gosh, it just sounds like heaven. So then the woman that helped her, I think her name was Paige, I can't remember, who helped her put together the pleasure room, she is an interior designer, and she offered Jillian a job as her assistant. She's like, her company is growing, she needs some help. And she saw that Jillian has like a really great eye. She decorated their whole home. And when it came to the pleasure room, honestly, Paige was like, I just did a couple of things, but that was your vision, that was brought to life. I didn't do that much. So everyone was waiting for her answer, and she's like, yes, she does want to do it, but she does want to talk to her husband. Now she knows this is going to be an issue for Dean. He has a real provider issue going on, but at the same time, she wants to do this. She's getting bored during the day. She wants to be able to go and do something. So she tells them, she's like, I do want to talk to my husband. She's like, but I definitely want to do this. So Dean is going to be going out of town, and she decides, let me go ahead, let's have this conversation. So she goes and she tells him about the job offer. He immediately stiffens up. The first thing he says is, well, that was nice of her to offer you that. So she caught that shade. She offered you something that was nice of her, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it. That's what that statement from him meant. So he has these issues about working, but this is because of what happened with your mother, but this is not the same situation. Like, at all. This is totally different. His father was a piece of shit, and that's why his mother worked 2 jobs, right? So you can't, like, it can't be if you work, that's the end result. She's going to off herself if she works. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not logical on any level. It's just not. And this is a prime example of why you have to deal with your shit and go lay on somebody's couch and deal with it. Okay? Because you've now made something concrete for you. Something that's almost immovable, because you've created this thought process that if a woman works, it's going to lead to the demise of a relationship. you know? And he says to her, like, you don't need the money. Like, why do you want to work? She tells him it's not about the money, it's about me. She's like, I get bored at this house during the day. But the first thing he thought about, he was like, are you not happy? And she's like, that's not what I said. That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that she says, I've spent my whole life taking care of you and taking care of the boys. Now that the boys are grown, they're out of the house. You travel a lot. You have a business that you can go to. You have something of your own. And you're trying to deny me something to have of my own. And that's what I don't like. That's the part that pisses me off with him, is that this woman, has giving up everything for you, basically. Well, I don't know what her dreams were before. I really don't. Because I don't remember them ever saying, like, if she had a dream of ever doing something. But it's just like, all he can think about is himself and how this is going to affect him. Like, it's not about, like, you genuinely think that her fucking happiness is wrapped around making sure you're happy. Like, what? So I think he delusional, fucked up is a lot of words we could use for his ass. Not a fan of Dean right now at all. She even says to Dean, like, I'm not your mother, you know? Like, because this isn't the same situation. And he's just, I don't know, I would have thought he would have been more supportive. I think knowing that your wife has known that there's a desire in you that you're not pursuing based upon some childhood shit, but she trusts you enough, loves you enough, wants to see your full self, right? And she allows you to be that, and then you gonna bitch on her about a job. I can't. It's part-time. I'm like, what the fuck? It's not like she finna all of a sudden go, I don't need you. But in his brain, he equates, if she works, eventually she's not gonna need me. So then to me, that means you don't have that much faith in me as a fucking person. Better yet, our relationship. But then you think that's it? Like, I just forget all about you, and because I don't need you anymore. So he got a little hero not little. He got a big ass hero complex as well. I'm like, no wonder you and fucking Mac friends. So she told him, because he was like, we'll talk about this later. So she's like, oh, what? I'm not important to talk about this now? He's like, I didn't say that. She's like, well, then why can't we talk about it now? He's like, I have this presentation I have to, get ready for, all this type of stuff. So before she walks out, she says to him, just to let you know, I'm taking the job. She was like, I was hoping you would be happy for me, you know, and this will be a good thing. She was like, but if you're not going to be happy for me, if this is going to cause a problem, she's like, then we're going to have a worse issue. Like, because like she's not backing down. This is something she really wants, and he should support her in that, you know? It's not like she's saying I need to go fuck other people. She's not saying that to you. You know? She's saying I've devoted my life to you and the boys. I need something of my own. You have something of your fucking own, right? You got a whole company of your own, but you don't want to allow me to have something of my own. So he was pissed. I didn't give a shit because he dead ass fucking wrong, you know? He's just dead ass wrong. We switched to Dean's POV. He has been in New York for about a week. Him and Jillian talk every day, but it's not their playful banner. He did get the contract. Normally that puts him on a high, but not doing this time because he knows he's fucked up at home. And he knows it's stupid. He knows it's not rational the way he's thinking. He feels her wanting to work is just gonna make her not want him anymore. And he feels, again, because the whole marriage, it's been about him. His goals, what he needed to reach, you know? Never about what her goals were and what she ultimately wanted. And her starting to become more assertive is, it started with her coming into that office that day. So assertiveness, listen, once you started in one area, that shit's going to work its way through other areas of your life. Just like his alpha, that, that fuckery part of it, right? that's going to start working through other parts of your life as well. So unfortunately, he's an alpha in the bedroom, but he tries to dominate in life in other parts of her life as well. That's just what it is. So when he saw this new independent side of her come out, it was great for her, for them sexually, right? But he wasn't anticipating that other parts of her life were going to start reflecting that change as well. And that's what he doesn't like. He likes things to be predictable when it's outside of that bedroom. He wants predictable. Like, we can do fun stuff, we can role play, we can, test our limits, we can do all that shit in this bedroom. But outside of the bedroom, I need things to be as so nothing feels rocky, right? And again, we know where that comes from. Fucked up childhood, right? So you don't want to experience that again, but you're doing things that could push this amazing person away, you know? His ass ain't thinking. But he realizes he's wrong. I'm like, well, at least you know you're wrong, you know? So he, of course, is terrified she's going to leave. That's basically what's going to happen, is that she is eventually going to leave him if she takes this job. It's like the first step in that happening. So their conversation on the phone is very polite, nothing like it used to be. And so he gets off the phone and he decides he's just going to get fucking drunk, because he really does not want to deal with the emotional shit. And so he gets another drink, and a woman with blonde hair comes and sits next to him and asks him if he's alone, if he, has any company. And he says he's alone. So the woman says her name's Candy, and he says something to her about her, basically like, is she a prostitute? She says, I prefer the term escort. It sounds better. So she asks, are you staying in the hotel? You must be from out of town. He says, I am. I'm here on business. She says, well, those are my favorite type of men. They tend to do the kinkiest things. So then he asked her if he could buy her a drink. She says yes. He calls over the bartender and she says she wants a screaming orgasm. Now, I had never heard of a drink called a screaming orgasm, and so I looked it up, and I get why it's called that. So it's got vodka, like amaretto, Bailey's, and I think it's got like a little milk in it. So it looks like cum. So I'm like, okay, so that's why they call it that. So then the bartender's kind of flirting with Candy. And immediately our boy Dean feels like possessiveness. And I'm like, wait a minute, what the fuck? How are you feeling possessive over this damn woman? You just met. Like, the wife wants to go back to work and now you doing this type of shit? Like, I cannot stand Dean at all, okay? I just couldn't believe it. Like, I was just reading this like, is this really happening? Is he really going down this freaking road? And so they're having a little back and forth conversation, and he winds up telling her, no kissing, no touching, like no fucking. But he tells her to come with him upstairs. Well, to his room. So she's like, okay. So then they're in the elevator. They're giving each other's these, sensual looks. And I'm like, Dean is such fucking trash. Like, I'm so pissed that he could do that to his wife. Like, nothing happened, nothing she said deserved for him to do what he's doing. Like, I am just floored. So they get to the room. He tells her, I think he told her to leave her clothes on. She had like a mini skirt. He told her just to take her shoes off, but to get in the middle of the bed, lay on her back. So she does. And then he tells her to open her legs so he can look at her pussy. And then he feels like a little guilt. And I'm like, now you feel guilt? Like, bitch, you should have felt guilt. Like, the moment, like so long ago. So he has her, she's done pulled up her miniskirt. He tells her to start pleasing herself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is he about to eat this girl's pussy? This is going to be tragic. But he just tells her to finger herself. And then she asked him, like, what do you want me to do that your wife wouldn't do? And he's like, well, actually, my wife's been like, you know, really adventurous lately. And she's like, yeah, but what is there something that she wouldn't do that you want to do? And he says, I want to fuck your tits. I'm just sitting there like you really think Jillian wouldn't let you fuck her tits? Like, really, dude? Like, come on. So then, sure enough, she's like, well, I got lube in my purse, and it can be for anything. So he gets the lube out of her purse. Sure enough, he fucks her tits, comes all over her neck and chest. And he says to her, do you know what they call when you come on a woman's chest or neck or whatever? And she says, no. He says it's called a pearl necklace. I'm like, oh, that's where that pearl necklace, why he got that for her. And then Candy says, oh, well, I do love pearls. And he says, yeah, my wife does too. So now he's consumed with guilt. He gets up, goes to shower. Eventually, Candy comes in, takes off the blonde wig, takes off the contacts, and we find out it's fucking Jillian the whole time. But I tell you, the relief I felt, because I really thought I was like fucking somebody else. I was like, no. So then he knows that they're in a pretty bad place for his wife to up and fly to New York. You know, they have a problem. He hasn't been willing to face it. He still doesn't want to face it in this moment. And he just says to her, you know, I need to be inside of you, like right now, I need to fuck you. So then, of course, they have this, you know, nice hard fuck. But he knows come tomorrow, they've got to have a conversation. The next morning, Jillian wakes up. Dean's not in the bed. She's kind of worried. But she figures, you know what? I'll just wait for him to come back. So she winds up going, looking around the room, and he's actually having breakfast. He's already showered, dressed. He was waiting to talk to her. And he told her that. He was like, you know, I ordered you up some breakfast and everything. And that made her happy because at least he was taking the initiative to have the conversation. He wasn't running away from it. So he was honest with her. He said that, you know, when you came in my office that day, I saw that bolder, confident, sexy side of you. I loved it. But when you told me about the job, I thought it meant that you were going to get to a point to where you didn't need me anymore, that I just wasn't going to be enough for you. And he says, I know it's stupid. I know it's wrong. He's like, you know, you've given me everything that I've ever desired. You know, and he apologized. He says, I'm sorry for being such an ass and denying you something that you really wanted. It was almost like the first thing you've asked for. And all this time, and my first response wasn't to fully support you. And I'm sorry about that. And he was like, but I do truly, you know, fully support you now and all this type of stuff. So she went and sat on his lap. She told him, Dean, I'm always going to need you. You're my best friend. You're my partner. Like, that's never going to change. And plus, I'm just like, it's an assistant job. She ain't balling like that. Like, where's she gonna go? I'm just saying, like, make this shit make sense. So we find out that 2 days before she came up to New York, she was in the playroom and she went to pulled out one of the suggestions, and it was one of his was to, like, basically take a call girl up to his room. And so that's why she did it. We switch over to well, it's like a Raina / Jillian POV. So remember, Raina is the owner of the adult store Sugar and Spice. So she, of course, has been really happy for Jillian. And Jillian's coming to find a little outfit. And they have some conversation. And Jillian tells her, because she's, you know, been in a drought. And so Jillian tells her, you know, maybe anonymous sex is something that would work for you, you know. And she's like, here's the problem. Every time someone finds out that I own an adult store, I am now the freakiest thing in the world. And that's what they expect. And so it just never works out. And so then Jillian hands her over an envelope that says, welcome. So she's given Raina an invitation to the Players Club. So if you want to find out her experience at the Players Club, that book is called Playing with Temptation. I think I'm going to check it out. I'm not going to read it on the channel, but I think I might read that to find out her little story. So that's the end of this book for our couple, Dean and Jillian. And then we're going to wrap everything up with the final book in this series, which is called The Capture. So we're going to get into that one next week. So what did you guys think of this? This just put me on an emotional roller coaster, because me thinking that Dean was cheating, it just broke my little heart. And I was like, please don't let him be this type of person, you know? So that got to me. It really was a surprise finding out that that was Jillian and not some other woman, because I really thought, I was like, he's just failed, you know. The other interesting thing was when they were in the actual room at the Players Club, and he was telling her that there was a window and people were watching. I thought people were really watching. And I thought he had really let somebody come in there to like fondle with her, but he didn't. So that was a shock too. So they set that up. Shout out to the writer, Erika Wilde. She set that up really good, because I believed it. I really did. But what did you guys think of this book and just the first book as well? Let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links are going to be available down below as well. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you share. As always, I truly do thank you all for supporting and listening to the Always Reading Book Club.